Welcome to the University of Montana Herbarium. The herbarium is located on campus in the Natural Sciences Building on the third floor in room 303. I'm Shannon Kimball. I'm the curator of the herbarium, and I also manage the collections, so I'm the collections manager. And throughout the year, I have some temporary staff that help, and students, work study students and volunteers that help manage the collection as well. In this tour, I'll tell you a little bit about our history. I'll tell you what we do on a daily basis here, and then also give you a little idea of the value of herbaria and why they're important to the public and to the greater scientific community. The herbarium here at the university was started in 1897 by a man named Morton Elrod, who is kind of a famous figure at the university and in Missoula as well. Morton Elrod came to the university when it first started in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The program started growing, and he was the first professor of biology, botany, and zoology. He also started the Flathead Lake Biological Station and made lots and lots of natural history collections throughout Montana, mostly western Montana. When Dr. Elrod arrived from back east, he did not know much about the natural history of this area, the area in which he was supposed to teach. So he set about making collections, trying to learn as fast as he can the flora and the fauna of the area. That is really the best way to do it, make the collections and then key out the specimens using all of the available resources. So he started collecting and making, accruing collections, building up folders, purchasing a cabinet, and his collections grew and grew over time. He stayed 38 years at the university. He also started the zoological museum here on campus. And now we have grown to 84 cabinets, and we have about 130,000 plant collections. Different professors and collectors from the Forest Service and consulting botanists have made collections over the years and contributed them to the herbarium. So we have a very good knowledge of the flora of Montana, and we have scientific documentation of the distribution of those plants specimens in certain locations at certain times in our history. So the herbarium is arranged in what we call a phylogenetic fashion. So cabinets 1 and 2 are the most primitive genetically. There are a lot of the organisms that are found in the fossil record, like ferns and club mosses, things that have not really changed that much over the millions of years that have passed by. And in the higher number cabinets, we have things that are more complex. They have more complex flower structure. There are lilies and orchids, and even grasses are fairly complex plants, vascular plants. Our collection contains vascular plants, also non-vascular plants such as liverworts, mosses, and lichens. They are also stored in cabinets like these. They're just arranged in a little different way. For the vascular plants, they are all stored on shelves like they are in the cabinet behind me, and they're all in folders. So this folder contains a specific genus and species. This is Agropyron repens, so it's a grass. And all of the sheets in this folder look basically like this. I'm sure you've seen these in pictures or on the web in different places. They all have the same structure. There's a label down in the lower right corner that habitat information, the location information, date of course, and the collector. This one was collected in the Missoula Valley by Eugene Adder, and it was collected in 1957. The way we structure our sheets, there is also a special stamp up in this area. Usually we'll put it over in this section to keep this area open. And this circle contains a special number that is unique to this sheet. So just like a library book in a library, we try to keep track of every single sheet that we have. If all of a sudden we can't find a certain number, we know that we really need to start looking for it. So every sheet has this unique number, and then a lot of the sheets have what's called a specimen packet up in the top, and this is just to house pieces that fall off or maybe have been taken off in order to identify the plants. Sometimes in the process of plant identification, we need to pull off a flower or a floret in this case for a grass, or even pieces of the leaf structure to make a positive identification, and we try to save all of those pieces up in the specimen packet. So lichens and moss we store in a little bit different way. They're stored in packets like this. The label information is very much the same with location and habitat information. The stamp, the unique stamp for each packet is under the flap, and then you can see there's the dried moss inside. Going back to a vascular plant collection, I'll give you a little bit of a summary on how the collections are made. They're made in the field, of course, and the plant is harvested. The collector usually tries to get as much of the root material as possible and get as much of the dirt off of the plant as possible. Takes it to what's called a plant press and presses it in the press and dries it for usually 3 days, probably for a grass, more for more succulent organisms. And when we get the plants, we usually just get them folded in newspaper, pressed already, and the habitat information that's been collected on a field notebook has been typed up in a nice label format. Here in the herbarium, we mount the plant on the sheet of paper, and then we take it through this accession process to make sure that the unique number is assigned, that it goes into our database, that it gets a photograph image taken, and then they are shelved in this very particular order here in the herbarium. And just like a library, we have to make sure that everything stays in order, because if a sheet is mistakenly placed in the wrong cabinet, it's almost impossible to find it in the future. In our space, in our area here on the 3rd floor, we have 4 rooms of cabinets just like this. And then we have a work room, which is the room I'm sitting in right now, and then just a couple of offices. I'd like to talk a little bit about different ways that the herbarium is used. The collection is primarily used as a reference collection for different types of people who study plants, say, for example, consultants who do different types of habitat work. Many times they're called to define the vegetation of a certain area. So they do this by using the knowledge that they already have in plant identification. But if they find plants that they aren't really sure what the exact genus and species are, they can use plant identification guides. This is the Manual of Montana Vascular Plants. That's one that we use a lot. And then this is the vascular plants of the West Central Montana Identification Guidebook. And they will use those books to figure out exactly what species they have, and then they can bring in their plants and compare them to the plants in the different folders and to see if they have indeed identified it properly. Kind of along the same lines, when these books were written, this one was done by Peter Lesica, and the other done by Klaus Lakshevitz, who was the curator here for a while. When those are written, they have to look at lots and lots of different plants and make lots and lots of measurements so they can capture the range of variability of the height or the color of a flower, maybe the length of the leaves. So it doesn't work for them to just look at, say, 5 different plants. They have to look at 30. So they can pull out different sheets and see how the plant variability is really extreme with, say, something like Idaho fescue, where at high elevations that plant can be pretty short, and then at lower elevations it's a common plant. It can be much more robust. So that is a really powerful use of the herbarium. Also, when these books are written, most of them have at least some illustrations, and in order for the artist to make these illustrations very accurately, they also have to look at pressed specimens. It is a really great archival representation of the vegetation of Montana throughout history. When the settlers first arrived in this part of the country, believe it or not, there were botanists making collections right away because they wanted to document the natural history, kind of like Elrod did, and sent those specimens, a lot of them, back to the Smithsonian. So we have a lot of early collections there, but we also have a lot here from the late 1800s. So we can see what the vegetation of Helena, Montana looked like when it was just a 4 square block community. We could see what the surrounding hills, plant communities were, and same with Missoula or Billings. So it's it's nice to have hard records for all of that information. The botanist who does a lot of the biodiversity studies for Montana out of Helena, she uses this collection because she can see that there actually were plants collected back in the 1930s, and then what was collected in the 70s, and now what's collected in the 2020s. Those are primarily the main ways that the herbarium is used. There are a lot of other ways that I haven't really touched on. Since we have a really accurate database now, people who don't live in Missoula, who have a harder time coming to this community, can access our specimens, and with each record, a very high resolution image is attached so that they can actually see the sheet and zoom in and see a lot of the structures as well. So that pretty much covers the information I have to present to you today. Please feel free to check out our website. It is on the University of Montana. It's linked in with all of their information. You can also contact me directly. My email address is on that website, and I do give some small group tours. We take some volunteers occasionally, probably not in 2021, but we are looking forward to the future for that. Feel free to contact me with any questions, and thank you for watching.